Let's give some takeaways from last night's Spurs loss to the 76ers, reaction to Peter J's Holt's comments regarding the state of the Spurs, and we're going to discuss the Locked On Spurs YouTube fan comment.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, this is Hot Rod.
And I'm RC from the Cybertron Springs.
And you're listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs right here on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Ken's 5 San Antonio. Glad to have you back. Make sure to follow me on X at Jeff G Spurs Zone. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every single day. You guys are the everydayers, and we appreciate you subscribing to us, whether it be on YouTube, like the Ken's 5 Plus app. Seriously, the list goes on and on. iTunes, Spotify. And yeah, we have a good show for you today. We're going to be giving you my quick takeaways from last night's Spurs loss to the 76ers. Yeah, it was we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Embiid, and we all know what happened. I'm going to bring in our first-time guest right here on Locked On Spurs, Matt Guzman. He's a student at Missouri, and we're going to be discussing basically the Locked On Spurs fans, some YouTube comments, and the recent comments made by Peter J. Holt regarding the state of the Spurs. Hey, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, so about last night. Look, we all know Joel Embiid just had himself a career night, 70 points, dropped it on the Spurs, and that is a large shadow, figuratively and literally from the big man in Philadelphia. 70 points, kudos to him. You got to tip your cap to him. Broke the Sixers record for the most points scored in a single game. So congratulations to Joel. But despite that great performance by Embiid, the Spurs, there were some great moments to highlight, and I'm going to pick three of them right now. And number one is three-point shooting. The Spurs came out hot, that first period, connecting on, about 5 3-pointers. They finished 13.3 shots made. So that's a good sign to see. The three-point shot not falling has been an issue for this team. So to see the three ball falling down, that was a good sight to see. Hopefully the Spurs can continue that coming up next against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Next one is Victor Wembanyama. Yeah, Wemby watch here, once again, thrills. I mean, look, if it wasn't for Embiid, I'm pretty sure everybody we're talking about right now is Wemby's performance against Embiid. If Embiid didn't have the 70 points, he finished with 33 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists in 28 minutes of play. So he had himself a great night, one of his best nights so far. It was just that shadow casted by Embiid, 70 points, that put a damper and celebration on Wemby's performance. But it's good to see him, again, having himself an impact on the court on both ends. Popovich talked about Wemby's adjustment to the NBA and what's been surprising him so far. And one of the things he highlighted was Wemby's adjustment to the physicality of the NBA. And so you saw Wemby just really being aggressive around the rim, finishing with dunks, taking advantage of his height, scoring on Embiid. It was just Embiid's 70-point night. You can't ignore that. But once again, a good outing from the rookie from France. The final takeaway is the Spurs got scoring. 6 players in double-figure scoring, led by Wemby's 33. Devin Vassell's 22. Highlight for him, back-to-back 20-plus point outings for him. Trey Jones with 12 points. By the way, he did get hurt late in the game, exited the game. Looks like he will not be back based on what we saw on that court. And then we saw Doug McDermott with 13 points off the bench, and Jeremy Sohan with 14 points, and Julian Champagnie with 12 points. So, the Spurs got some scoring, and they kept it close. Just because Joel Embiid has so many points, you would think it probably was a rout of the Spurs by Philadelphia, but it wasn't. The Spurs only lost by 10 points. They were still hanging in there. It was just, too much Embiid. The Spurs even won the fourth period, 34-29. So, despite that great performance by the Sixers center, the Spurs still held tight. They still made it a game. They didn't hang their heads low. They kept on fighting, to keep it close despite the performance by Embiid was really good to see. So those are some three highlights, takeaways from last night's loss to the 76ers. Up next is a big one, Thunder, Wemby, Chet Holmgren, Rookie of the Year talk. Yeah, all that good stuff. This Wednesday night out in San Antonio. Coming up next, we're going to bring in our guest, Matt Guzman. He is a student at Missouri. I got a chance to meet with him during a few Spurs games and Spurs events. He was there covering the team, just to learn the ropes and everything in media. So we're going to be discussing with him the Locked On Spurs YouTube fan comments and Peter J. Holt's recent comments about the state of the Spurs. That's next on Locked On Spurs. Hey, I want to talk about FanDuel. Hey, the NFL postseason is here. So it's time for you to get on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is easy to use, very user-friendly, convenient, easy to navigate, and there's so many different ways you can bet, like live same-game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explorer tab, that is, and they have the Parlay Hub. We could go make a parlay and find the best way to find the popular parlays by using the FanDuel Parlay Hub on that app. So many ways to bet and have fun and get in all the action with FanDuel. You want to visit FanDuel.com/lockedon right now. Make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
This is Zach Aguilar, the voice of Tanjiro Kamado, and you're listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia.
And we are now back right here on Locked On Spurs with the first-time guest right here on Los. He is Matt Guzman. Now, you're probably wondering, well, who's Matt? Well, one good thing about working in the media and being in the media room at Spurs games, you meet new people and new viewpoints and new friends. That's what Matt is. I met Matt during he had a little stint with the media working session, I think for school purposes, right, Matt?
Yeah, well, it was a little bit different than that. We can get into that in a second, but yes.
Yeah. Sure. So, I got to know Matt a little bit more. He came to me for some advice. I said, you know what? Let's bring on Matt. Let's bring in the young kids now, because this guy's getting too old right now. We got to bring in some fresh blood. Again, he is Matt Guzman. Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a sophomore at the University of Missouri, so I'm up here in Columbia right now, but all of my extended family is from San Antonio, so I'm there as much as I can be. Whenever I'm back home, I split time between where I live in Austin and where they live in San Antonio. And so I actually got a gig working for Inside the Spurs on Fan Nation, and I was able to get sent to games because I was in the area, and that's where we met. That was for that. So it wasn't necessarily a school thing, but I did get the opportunity through the university because when I reached out, they were like, "Oh, you're at University of Missouri. Of course, we'd love to have you," because that J school tag does do a little bit of good for sure. But yeah, so that's about me. I've been covering the team since last February, so the end of last season into this whole off season, and then so far through this midway point. And I was born and raised a Spurs fan as well, so I've been around the team quite often, and this is just the first time I'm getting to be around the team, in person. It's been great, and I appreciate you having me on and taking the time to do this.
Yeah, not a problem. Yeah, I think Matt and I actually met for the first time at a Christmas event the Spurs put on at the Frost Center. They've given away beds. I'm not kidding. They're giving away beds to a group of local athletes. And then from there, I got to know Matt a little bit more. And I think we sat next to each other in the media session. Oh, we sat the row ahead of me. Yeah, you sat in the chair right in front of me. And I sat in the row behind you. Yeah. So we would just strike up conversation. And then the more I got to know Matt, I said, I think he might be a good guest for Locked On Spurs. So, of course, he comes on Locked On Spurs with probably one of the most heaviest topics in recent couple days. Peter J. Holt's comments about the state of the team and where it's going. So, Matt, again, appreciate you coming on Locked On Spurs. Make sure to follow Matt on X. You see it on your screen at MattGZMAN. Do that right now. Matt, let's dive into this. Talk about some heavy lifting to start your first time here, and that is Peter J. Holt's recent comments about the state of the team and where it's going. Needless to say, Matt, not a lot of Spurs fans liked it. Now, some did, but the majority of them did not like it. In a nutshell, he spoke with French media outlet L'Equipe, and in summation, just said they're not going to rush the process. They're not going to skip steps. They're not worried about Wembanyama leaving if the losing seasons continue. They do like his development. In a nutshell, they're not going to worry about winning right now. that's basically what it is. Matt, not a lot of Spurs fans like to hear that. They want that win now mentality, like go get it now. Do you like what Peter J. Holt had to say about the state of the team? Do you think not skipping step is the right approach, or do you think no, they need to fast forward this just to keep Wemby happy?
I think there's an argument to be made that if you've got a superstar that's supposed to be the future of your franchise, you have to keep them happy. You have to make sure that they're staying so that they can be that future of the franchise. But I think that if there's anything that he's proven to us this season that's off of the basketball court, it's that Victor is very different from your traditional, I guess, your young superstar. Right away when he came in, when he was drafted, he said he wanted to be good at every part of the job. That even meant media. You don't hear that very often. He's very thoughtful with his answers. Anytime you ask him a question, he's very, very good about listening. Now, I think that obviously there is a need, and there should be, that priority to keep him happy. But at the same time, I think he is happy. I think he's really just immersing himself in the NBA and the culture. And I don't think it should be an A1 concern that he's going to leave because they're losing, because I think that honestly, in his mind, I think he wants to be the guy to turn the Spurs around and to get them back to those winning ways that they had. So he'd rather be in this position than kind of be thrown into a mediocre role somewhere else. Obviously, with his skill set, he probably wouldn't, but this is kind of a very unique area for him to be in. He really is the number one option right now. And I don't think I liked what Peter J. Holt had to say, because they're I guess stressing the importance of being very intentional with this process. They know what they have in Victor. They know that they have other good stars around him. They're all very young. This is the youngest team in the league, and there is something to be said that he should be kept happy. But I think that by not rushing the process, I think by focusing on his development, he's going to be plenty happy. That's kind of what my takeaways were.
Yeah. And look, I'm going to show how the big age gap between me and Matt right now. Matt, you and your generation of Spurs fans grew up with nothing but this team winning. That's it. That's right. It. Nothing but winning. Decades and decades of playoffs, titles, deep playoff runs, great regular seasons. I come from when the Spurs first came to San Antonio, and that wasn't the thing. Right. And so I'm used to the up and down of a pro franchise. You look at the Cavs. When LeBron left, they went down. They went down fast, and then they're slowly coming back up. So this is just a natural process. But I understand. So I get where the younger generation of Spurs fans want to see the right now. Where's our River Parade? Where's our Fiesta and Spurs playoffs combo? Where is that? And that has been non-existent for the last 5 years. But I started thinking is there a happy middle? We don't want to rush the process, but we can maybe get things going, like maybe not slam on the gas pedal.
Right. Absolutely.
Maybe, okay, we're going into the next stretch of highway that says, our speed limit now is 60, and I think that's where the Spurs are positioned. You look at them right now, I lost count how many draft picks they got. It's just tons of them, first and second rounders. They do have a lot of cash, flexible cap space. But Matt, what about tradable assets, aka current Spurs players? Where do you think the Spurs should stand on that? Is it pretty much everybody else but Wemby is on the table? Where do you fall on that?
So I think right now, the way that they stand, obviously the point guard is that biggest, they need to hit something there, whether that's Trey Jones taking the next step or whether that's bringing somebody in. I would honestly say, I think it's not exactly Victor and everybody else, but there should be consideration where if you have a star on another team, if you have somebody that you can eye, you have the draft picks, you have the players, you have the young talent that teams want in return for these stars, and you have the allure of Victor Wembanyama for another player who would want to come to the Spurs. I would say Trey Jones is untouchable right now, just because if you're going to go get a point guard, you're going to want to have a backup point guard. I wouldn't deal your only point guard just to get another one. Right. And I would say Devin Vassell is locked in for, the next 5 years of his contract. He should not be dealt. But guys like Doug McDermott, like Jetty Osman, even Jeremy Sohan in the right deal, I could see being a good deal for both teams. But I definitely don't think that it's just Victor and everybody else. But there definitely is some consideration to be made, especially around, guys like DeJounte Murray, who's been kind of floating around everywhere. But I do see that, there's a lot of fans and a lot of the fan base who wants just to go all in and bring a bunch of stars in and try to get it done. I don't know if that's the right approach. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's kind of how I feel.
You know, how I feel about it is like, I wouldn't mind it because I know the Spurs can afford it, like literally afford it with the draft picks and the cash they have, and yes, tradable player contracts. And look, if you're telling me right now, and I'm making this up, you know, like, I don't know, give me a really good point guard that'll fit with San Antonio right now. You know, Mike Conley, or a guy of that nature, that's a veteran point guard, a presence on that court. And then I think who's he with? I forget what team he's with. Maybe whatever. But the asking price, Grizzlies, yeah. And the asking price is something like, okay, well, give us, you know, Blake Wesley. You know, give us I don't know if he's worthy of a first rounder, but you know, I think the Spurs could help not skip steps, but address issues. And look, you mentioned the DeJounte Murray thing. You know, I understand it's DeJounte, you know, it's, you know, spicy because it's the former player. But I said in Locked On Spurs before, I'm just glad that at least they recognized this point guard spot as an issue. Yeah, it just happened to be DeJounte, but if it had been a Mike Conley, a Lowry, or whoever, you know, okay, good. At least Spurs, I know you recognize the issue. But, you know, you mentioned Vassell. He's been kind of having a roller coaster season. It really has. You know, shooting wise, it's up and down. I mean, he comes off a career high explosion night, you know, high points, and then has a stretch of games where he just doesn't shoot well and looks almost non-existent. Then we saw against the Wizards, he's back again, 20 plus points. Yeah. Do you really think that he's not tradable? I think he probably could be as well.
You know, I guess kind of like what I mentioned with Jeremy, if in the right deal, I could see why a team would want Devin Vassell. Absolutely. I mean, he's very young. Like you mentioned, that consistency has kind of been his big point this season. But, you know, if he can develop and get more of that consistency, he's proven he can score and he can shoot very well. I guess to your point, I agree. If there's a right deal, if there's something that comes on and there really is a big player that you're only going to grab him if you throw Devin Vassell in this deal, I could see the Spurs going for it. I really could.
It'll have to be something like the way Atlanta wanted DeJounte, like that kind of package. I'd be okay. Now we're talking,
right? And you know, that's something that, you know, it could go both ways because you know, the Hawks, as you know, when you look at this trade, because the Spurs gave up DeJounte Murray and he ended up going to the Hawks might want more from San Antonio to be like, hey, well, you want him back? Well, then it's going to be a higher price than last time, you know? And I could see something like that happening, and I wouldn't want to throw too many assets into a trade for DeJounte Murray. But I mean, like you mentioned, Devin Vassell, I would consider him maybe besides Victor, the last person to trade, but maybe not entirely untouchable. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What did you think about the fan reaction, you know, from what Peter J. Holt had to say? You know, basically they're just going to take a slow and steady process. Right. You know, not all, but most fans kind of, you know, like, no. Right. You know, they want to win now. I mean, they're not entirely wrong, are they?
They're not. They're really not. You know, and that's something that I honestly found myself getting a little upset about right from the bat, you know, after his first summer league game when it did not go very well, because the amount of media attention that Victor got on the Spurs and the amount of, you know, posts and just complete hype that he was getting to be on this new team, to be in the NBA, it honestly set up the NBA world to be disappointed. Because yes, he's an amazing talent, but right now as a 19-year-old, now he's 20, but as a 20-year-old kid leading this franchise from a season that almost didn't have 20 wins to try and get it to 50 on his own is tough. That's hard. And he's really found his consistency, has found his groove. And I understand where the Spurs fans are coming from, especially like you mentioned, this younger generation who's only known winning. They want it to be winning again. You know, they're not used to having to sit through this lull of, you know, losing and winning and losing and losing, you know. So I understand where they're coming from. And I think that a lot of that stems from that hype that Victor received from the beginning of the season, because they expected this team to be super high.
I wonder if this is still, you know, ripple effects of Kawhi in the situation. You know, like, oh, it's a superstar. It's the superstar. You don't want to make him too unhappy. He might leave. You know, I wonder if that has anything to do with it. But I mean, two different situations, you know. But
absolutely. I was going to say, being in the building for the Clippers this Thanksgiving, just hearing their fan reactions, the fact that Pop had to get involved that second game was just unreal. I think that they very much do feel the effects of that still. It still is a very sore subject, and they would hate to see another superstar leave, especially force his way out. Like I mentioned, I don't know if Victor's the type to do that. Obviously, it's too early to tell who he is, but early impressions say he's not going to do something like that, and that's kind of why I'm on the side of, I think that Peter coming out and saying what he did is, I guess, more proof that they're trying to be intentional and be careful about it rather than being, not caring about winning, because I think he absolutely does.
Yeah, no, he does. I mean, you look, let's not forget too, and I should have brought this up earlier, is that the goal, according to Peter J. Holt, is to turn the team into a NBA super powerhouse team.
Yeah.
So they wanted to be that type of team, basically back at the Big Three era. And they have the right pieces for that currently. Obviously Wemby, Devin, but I would still tell Spurs fans, Matt, they're not out of the rebuild process yet. I mean,
I would agree.
They're close to getting out of it, but they're not out of it yet. Matt, your thoughts?
I would agree. I think that this beginning half of the season has proven exactly that. You go on an 18-game losing streak. That's not signs of being out of a rebuild. That is fully in rebuild mode. And I think this first season is the best season of any. Like Victor actually said it at a shoot-around earlier this year. Like, this is the worst version of him that we're going to see, because from this point on, he's only going to get up. And now it was interesting because really early on in the season, when they took down the Suns twice in a row and Victor had a 38-point game, people kind of thought maybe they are really going to be, turning around. But I think that, not that it was luck, I think that really was skill there, but it's hard. Popovich has said this countless times. It's hard to play 48 minutes of a basketball game,
it is.
And half of the season, only 8 wins. Like, they're definitely still in rebuild mode, but like you mentioned, they're close. And I think that that's a very good thing to hold on to, because they absolutely have their franchise centerpiece with Victor. It's just a matter of who's going to step up and who's going to be brought in.
Yeah, at least the Spurs are positioned well to either make an immediate move or continue with what Peter J. Holt said with the process, not skipping steps. Either way, the Spurs will be fine. Hey, we're not done talking with Matt. When we get back, we're going to look at what you have to say, Locked On Spurs fans. What are y'all talking about? We're going to read some comments left on the Locked On Spurs YouTube fan page. So that's coming up next right here on Locked On Spurs. Hey, I want to talk to you about PrizePicks. You want to get PrizePicks right now, everybody. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They are the easiest, most exciting way to play DFS, and it's just you against the numbers. You don't have to worry about the pros, the sharks, just something that'll keep you away from it. No, it's just you versus the numbers. That's it. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and hopefully you can start watching those winnings roll in. They got it all at PrizePicks. They have quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, enormous selection of players that you could choose from, stat types, and that's what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Another reason why you got to go get it. Also, for those who have Apple Pay, they offer Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this basketball season. Then we got weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday, where each Tuesday PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value. What more do you need? Go to PrizePicks right now. I have it. You should get it too. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNBA. The code is LockedOnNBA. That'll get your first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, it's daily fantasy sports made easy.
This is Emily Swallow, and you are listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia.
And we're back with Iron Man himself. Oh, that's not Iron Man. Who's that? No, that's Matt Guzman. That's Matt Guzman. He is a student at Missouri, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And make sure to follow him on X at MattGZMAN. I got to know him, get to meet him during a little stint he had working with us in the media workroom, asking those questions post game, all that good stuff, going to Spurs events. Really good kid. Again, make sure to follow him on X at MattGZMAN. We're talking all things Spurs, and now we're going to talk about what y'all are talking about when it comes to the silver and black. Now, I didn't want to tell Matt what some of the comments, questions that were left. I wanted more of a natural reaction. But I did give him a hint. I did say they're going to be about Wemby and maybe one about Chet. But let's just see how Matt reacts to what y'all are talking about on the Locked On Spurs fan page. And the first one comes from Dolo World, WRLD. That's how they spelled it on the fan page. It says, that was crazy, is that they were close. Even if Wemby would have still been out there, they might have lost by the same amount. Now they're talking about the most recent game where the Spurs took the loss. What are your thoughts about that? That this team, although they're maybe losing, recently, and we know that Wemby's on the minutes restriction, but they're kind of staying competitive even without him. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, that was kind of something that was evident early on. Victor made it his goal not to miss any games, but obviously he was going to miss at least one or two. He's missed a few, and obviously that ankle injury right before the Mavs game kind of set him back on this whole minutes restriction. But early on, whenever he would miss games, the Spurs just looked lost. Even though they had been without him, and it was kind of it was resemblant of the same team that had been there the last 3 seasons before him, with Keldon as the front runner and Devin Vassell kind of joined there later. But I think as of recently, the Spurs, not just Wemby, but the entire team has kind of found a rhythm. They've learned how to move and how to work without him in the lineup sometimes, because they've had to, and Zach Collins was out, but now that Collins is back, they have another center, and, Dominic Barlow's kind of fleshed out a little bit more. I think that it's a really, really good sign that the Spurs are able to stay competitive. And we're talking about that Charlotte loss where he wasn't playing. Now, it says something that they blew out the Hornets with Wemby, and without him, they lose. But at the same time, like to the fans' comment, it's a very good sign that they were able to stay competitive without him in the lineup.
And what I like about it too is that I'm glad that the Spurs team goes through games of life without Wemby.
Yes.
I think if they start leaning on him as more as a crutch, then they're not going to know how to deal with it when he's not out there. And so I'm okay with him sometimes with the load management. And these are the situations where I do. I mean, let your Keldons and your Jeremy and your Trey Jones, all those guys figure it out without having your main weapon on both ends of the court.
For sure.
And that gets them going. It's funny you mentioned Barlow because, you got to wonder where Barlow may be if Bassie never got hurt. Because be in the G League. Bassie, he was the backup to Wemby. So he got injured. So those doors open for him. And again, it just tells you the impact of Wemby. We've been with him on the court. We know what he can do. Off the court, we know this team can perhaps handle teams, at least stay in the fight.
I agree. For sure.
Versus teams where they could have used him. Do they win against Charlotte with him? Probably. I think they do.
I would agree.
But again, life without Wemby is, although maybe upsetting for you Spurs fans, but I think it's good for the Spurs and their development to learn how to play without him. All right. Let's look at the next comment here. This comes from Henry Rojas 2783. It's about the big game this week. Chet versus Wemby in San Antonio, and of course the Rookie of the Year chase. Now, Henry says Wemby will settle the Rookie of the Year against the Thunder in their next 3 matchups. Barring injury, Wemby should be available for those games. Buying or selling that Wemby is going to put his lock on that award in the next 3 matchups versus Chet?
I'm hesitant to say agree,
exactly.
Because the last matchup the two teams had, neither of the stars shined. Both Wemby and Chet kind of took a back seat in that game. Now, just to give a little early spoiler, I'm of the argument that Victor is the Rookie of the Year. I do believe that he's proven that, especially over the last 10 games, to be doing what he's doing on a minutes restriction. And that's not a knock on what Chet has done over in OKC, because that team is thriving right now. That team is one of the best teams in the league, and they're only one spot ahead of the Spurs as far as youth and age. And so it's really impressive what they're doing over there. Now, I think you kind of have to look at whether or not they would be able to produce the same way or produce the same kind of points, kind of production with different situations. But as far as the Spurs versus Thunder goes, I don't know if he's going to settle it in that game because of just what happened last time. It's really hard to say. But at the same time, I'm very excited to see if they can both kind of do their thing this time instead of just taking that back seat and doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, as of this NBA season, Chet's Thunder team is up on the Spurs and Wemby 1-0.
Yep.
He's won Chet the last 2 back-to-back Rookie of the Month awards. But we're not done with Henry's comments. So he goes on to say, Matt, that Chet has been more efficient and his contributions have contributed to his team's winning record. With that said, Wemby still been more dominate and should be able to dominate Chet in the remaining games. I don't know if he's gonna dominate Chet because even pre-NBA, these guys have gone at it before.
Right.
And it's almost a wash. It's almost a wash. Like, okay, well, Wemby, I'm making this up. Wemby has 20 points. He beat Chet. Chet has 18. But, Chet's connected more on the field goal shots. Wemby did it. I mean, It's like neck and neck right there. Do you think it'll be a neck and neck race to the bitter end for the Roy?
I could see that. And, to Henry's point, he mentioned that Chet is contributing to the team's success a little bit more. Mm. Now, I just had this conversation. I think that if this were an MVP debate, Chet would take it just because of how good the Thunder have been versus how bad the Spurs have been. Now, this is the Rookie of the Year. It's not nearly as reliant on how good the team is doing, simply the rookie's production and impact on the floor. I will say I think that it will be a neck-to-neck race, all the way to the end of the season. I think Victor's bound to win one of these Rookie of the Month awards.
Yeah, he is.
At some point, maybe when he comes off that minutes restriction, if he can just up all of those numbers that he's been putting on while having to sit on the bench for most of the game. Yeah. I do think it will be a close race at the end of it, however. I do think so.
Yeah, I actually got him penciled in for the next award, the next Rookie of the Month award.
Yeah,
I think so because he's been on a tear recently.
Absolutely.
And although the Spurs are not winning as much as the Thunder have been, but they have won a couple more games. So,
right, they've looked a lot better.
They looked a lot better. He definitely does look a lot better. The numbers are there. We all know it. I don't have to tell you, the listeners. Wemby's just been destroying, on the court on both ends of the court.
Right.
And not Victor, I'm sorry. Chet has kind of had a little bit of a dip. That may impact him in the next award for the Rookie of the Month award. But I do have Victor is getting the next one. I just cannot see a full season to go by without him not getting one.
I agree.
Just one.
I agree.
But as far as the Rookie of the Year award race is going, Vegas, Caesar Sportsbooks has Chet still winning out the award. And then what they say, Matt, Vegas always knows. So do you think Spurs fans, you would be crushed if it's Chet winning the Rookie of the Year award at the end of the day?
I think Spurs fans will be crushed. If Victor doesn't win, I think to the extreme, they might say that it was a wasted season if Victor couldn't even win Rookie of the Year, because obviously the Spurs aren't in a position to make a playoff run. But I also don't think I think Spurs fans will be crushed. I don't think it's the end of the world by any means. I think no. If Chet ends up winning, it may be because they factor in that team success. And Victor's going to have plenty of that in years to come. He doesn't need this award to prove anything. He's proven himself already. So I am interested to see how it goes. And, you're right. Vegas does tend to know things. So we shall see.
Yeah, Vegas had the Spurs winning only 22 games this year. All of us were laughing at them. And now we're being laughed at. Y'all really thought this team was going to win more than 22. Look at them. They only got, 8 wins so far on the season. So, wow, what a down season has been. But, hey, there is promise. Victor is looking great. The future is bright if you factor in the draft picks, the cap space. Yes, tradable asset players as well. So hopefully the Spurs will get out of the rebuild sooner than later. But according to Peter J. Holt, it's going to take a little while. And according to you guys, Spurs fans, y'all want that win now mentality. But we'll see what the Spurs are going to be doing in the upcoming season, months, days, games, etc. He is Matt Guzman. Make sure to follow him on X at MattGZMAN. Tell us what's going on with you.
Well, I'm going to continue to write from here. I'll just be doing coverage of the games and as many features as I can be. Those are my favorites. But other than that, I'm just going to be around. I'm always up on Twitter. My DMs are open. Feel free to throw your Chet comments at me. One of my roommates actually is a big Chet fan, so we have this conversation constantly.
Man, awkward in that dorm room.
But yeah, I really appreciate your time. I'm glad you had me on. I would love to come back if you'd have me. This was a great experience, and it was great meeting you too in San Antonio. I loved it.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, we definitely had a few times we got to chat a little bit between conference people coming out. Wemby take a break and come back, so we got to catch up. Again, he is Matt Guzman. Again, you see his X handle right there. Make sure to go follow it. Hey, we'll be back tomorrow on Locked On Spurs. More silver and black, shocker. Hopefully discussing wins, hopefully discussing positive stuff instead of the rebuild. We'll see what the Spurs have in store for us in the coming week. I think our next guest tomorrow will be Rudy Campos of Sweep the League, so he'll be joining us again on Locked On Spurs. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. Free and available wherever you get podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Kens 5 Plus app, YouTube. The list goes on and on. And check out Locked On Sports Today, a 24/7 streaming channel only on YouTube. The Locked On Sports shows, yes, every league, from the local host to the national host to the regional host, we're all there 24/7 on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today. Go subscribe to it right now. So for Matt Iron Man Guzman, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.